Hello, welcome to the Creators Guild podcast. I'm Chris Howell, and with me,
Jared Lovelady.
and we are here to talk about all things creative. And we are going to dive in a little bit today and give you what is it called? Tickle your fancy. Uh, what's the word?
I don't know.
It's not spoiler. It's teaser. That's what I'm looking for. You get some teaser today. So, book 2, we're getting closer on our final edits. So we're really trying to push toward the end of this week. I don't know. I don't know. But hey, we are pushing at least, right?
We're definitely pushing.
So we're getting a little closer, but we thought today we jump in and give you a little teaser for some of book 2. I'm looking at the right now chapter 4, although it won't be chapter 4. We haven't edited the chapter headings yet, but this won't be chapter 4.
No, it'll be, I don't know what chapter it is.
No, it'll not chapter 4. Something other than chapter 4. Yeah, so we're going to dive in. We're going to read a chapter, and then we're going to talk about that chapter, and we're going to talk a little bit about what's coming up in book 2 we're going to try to not throw any spoilers out there for those of you anxiously waiting for book 2 to come out. Okay. Chapter TBD. A Simple Betrayal. Cycle of Volmar, year 12182. I fear the future of the province, and at times the realm. I pray to all the gods for the strength to do what I must to save those I love. Journal of Dason Ethran, 18th day of the cycle of Petnala, year 12182 AC. With a sigh, Captain Ethran moved yet another carved shield across one of the map's dotted lines, away from a command post, placing it at the embossed star of an adjoining zone. A dismal scene played out before him on the low stone table. Paramin was one of the smaller provinces in Cuvia and shared a border with Avalonia by only a few leagues in the northeast. When the challenge from House Barasine had come by way of the royal page, Corvin had sent the acknowledgement and agreed to the terms without even consulting Captain Ethran. It galled him that Corvin had not pushed back or appealed to the crown. The house was in disorder after Baron Umari's death. He had barely had time to go over organization after returning from Glen Heights before his troops were on the march. What's more, Corvin had not even shared the nature of the dispute. As acting Baron of House Umari, it was his prerogative, but it did not sit well with the captain to not know why his men's lives were being put on the line. Disputes that led to official confrontation were not rare in the least, but withholding information from the commanding officer certainly was. Every scrap of knowledge could be an advantage. At least Ethran had been able to select the battlefield, being the captain of the challenged army. He knew this ground like the back of his hand. No one had beaten him in this theater. None had even come close, which made the current battle trajectory all the more suspicious. "Pike," he said, not looking up from the map. "Sir," came the reply. Ethran raised his eyes as the youth stepped from his station along the wall. The boy's dark gray eyes were bloodshot and shadowed with exhaustion. Dirt marred the white of his gold-embroidered tunic, but his messenger's uniform was neat, and he held his head high. He was a good lad, strong and capable. He'd been running messages for 2 days, with only a few hours' break for sleep. If things kept on the way they were, he'd have a lot more running to do yet. "You saw the movement?" Ethran asked. He expected his runners to pay attention to the board. The success of their entire campaign depended on their skills in memorizing the map and recognizing his movements without him having to spell it out for them. "Yes, Captain," Pike replied, without hesitation. "Is Sergeant Marn to split the patrol or join them with Lieutenant Bremen's troops?" "Join them, and tell Bremen to hold Zone 3 at all costs. I can get us out of this mess, but if we lose those heights, it'll take a deal with the ferrymen to turn things back to our favor. Quick now, lad. If Captain Ullman suspects the movement, he may catch the sergeant in transition, and we can't afford that." "Yes, Captain," Pike said, and sprinted from the stone-walled room. Looking back at the map, Ethran let out another slow breath. 2 days. His Western Guard had been in and out of combat for 2 days, and nothing was going as it should. It didn't make sense. Dotted lines divided the pale green of the rolling hills and red rocky overhangs, and the brown and dark green patches of forest into 12 battle zones. An embossed star indicated the command post of each zone. He scrubbed a hand through his hair as Lieutenant Lorana rose from the stone desk where 2 other of his lieutenants sat going over strategy. They were the few besides the runners who stayed with the captain as part of his command. It was up to them to help keep track of movements and offer advice on strategy. If anything happened to him, command would fall to this group. "Will Bremen be able to hold, Captain?" Lorana asked as she scanned the map. "And what of the pass between zones 3 and 8? If Olin gains another turn, he could take advantage and recover zone 8 on his next move. I can't see how he has been able to outmaneuver us. It's as though he knows our plan, sir." Lorana had a good mind for strategy, but she was new to her role. Perhaps it was mere curiosity, or a desire to learn, that made her question Ethran so often. Had her tone not been that of a novice seeking understanding, he would have been annoyed. As it stood, she had picked up on his maneuvers quickly. If her ambitions included learning from his expertise, he would not hold it against her, so long as she didn't overstep. It would help her position if her breastplate had the true sigil of House Umari, rather than the sinuous serpent that those close to Corvin had adopted. "I'm leaving the pass open as a temptation. I do not expect Orlan to take the bait, but if he does, I'll have a counter move available and can capture those forces and remove them from the field. It's a gamble, but one worth taking this early in the game." He knew Captain Orlan, and had faced him in prior skirmishes, and had even played him in pitch. The man was not a strategist. Oh, he had heart, and was good with his men, but he had no head for the game like this one. He would have been an excellent subordinate, but in Ethran's mind he never should have been given a command. How, then, was he so handily meeting and blocking Avalonia's every move? Golden shields with the dragon of House Umari, each representing a section of soldiers, surrounded 7 of the 12 zones. It had started as an equal split the morning before, with Ethran and Orlan distributing their forces evenly. Move and countermove throughout the day had allowed the Avalonian Western Guard to take 3 zones from the Paramin Protectorate, commanded by Orlan. Many considered Ethran the best strategist in all of Cuvia, but even he was surprised at the end of the day at how quickly Orlan's troops had ceded ground. The odds in this skirmish heavily favored Avalonia, and the spectators who filled the watchtowers on the surrounding hills had to know the outcome by the end of the first day, as surely as Ethran did. But something had changed. The game master, who sat with his judges and directors overlooking the field, signaled to each side their respective turns to move, attack, defend, or retreat. Had given no indication that there was anything amiss, but Ethran could feel it. Orlan wasn't good enough to beat him back so handily, but already the Avalonian Guard had lost a quarter of its strength through death or capture. The loss of his men's lives rankled Ethran far more than the loss of ground. He had always considered Orlan to be honorable. Ethran had instructed his men to take the enemy captive, if possible, rather than kill. Injury could take a man out of battle as easily as death, and he wanted as many men to go home from both sides as possible. This was a political dispute, after all. But it seemed Orlan had no such compunction when it came to sparing the lives of Avalonians. Perhaps it was the result of the growing tension between East and West. The eastern provinces had become more restless, and the threats against Princess Tawara were assumed to come from one of the provinces, who opposed both the crown and the continued process of succession. The assassinations of Western princesses-elect had become an increasing risk as eastern provinces grew bolder in their opposition. This, combined with the death of the Baron, may well have been Corvin's reasoning for accepting the challenge so readily. Although it was a meager thread to grasp, it did offer a measure of satisfaction to be the potential sword of revenge in the interim Baron's hand. Red and blue tiles dotted multiple zones, marking engagements between forces. At the end of the previous day, the map held only blue tiles. Today, nearly all were red. His thoughts were interrupted as Aylar rushed into the room. Her breath came in quick gasps. No wonder. He had last seen her with a message. He had last sent her with a message to Zone 7, nearly half a league from the current command position, with rough terrain between. "Captain," she panted, offering a quick fist-to-chest salute. Her hazel eyes were panicked, and dirt streaked her forehead. Like Pike, she had been moving nearly non-stop over the course of events so far. Lieutenant Arnold has been taken. Half his troops were killed or captured with him. The other half have joined Sergeant Dagon in Zone 4. Sergeant Dagon had to use one of his red flags to stop the Paramin soldiers from pursuing. We will have to leave a flag up, or else take a movement loss on the next round. Sir, he'll be cut off if the Protectorate takes another zone while he requests your orders. Bloody hell, Ethran swore as he grabbed a red tile and slammed it down onto the embossed star with the number 7 at its center. This news was the final indicator. It was more than an implication. The only reason the Paramons would have attacked Zone 7 was if Orlan was being fed information from Ethran's command. There were too many coincidences, too many perfect movements for his opponent. What's more, Orlan was a poor enough strategist that he had given it away. A better commander would have been more subtle, but not Orlan. Why set a careful trap for a fox that's been killing your chickens when you can burn them down the coop and be done with it? The question was, who had betrayed him? In the moment since Ayler's arrival, Ethran had decided. He could trust no one in his immediate command, not even the runners, with one exception. Ayler would not betray him. She was his blood, and they shared more than captain and subordinate. The young runner was fiercely loyal and would die before turning against him. He would give each runner their instructions separately. When it came to Ayler, he would send her to Sergeant Arden's squad with a coded message before she returned to Zone 4 with the other runners. Turning away from the table, Ethran's mind raced. 3 more messengers sat on the stone bench waiting for his orders. Dirt stained their black trousers and the soft leather boots crafted for running. Sweat stains marred the white and gold of their tunics, and all 3 looked bone-weary. As Ethran looked at them, Talon, the youngest runner of the group, in this group, sagged, his eyes fluttering and his head dropping towards his chest. With a start, he caught himself, straightening his back. Runners were always young. They were the one rank protected by decree in these skirmishes. Occasionally one would be injured by a fall or a stray arrow or some other unfortunate incident, but taking runners captive was forbidden by the rules of every conflict. Intentionally harming a runner was a death sentence. They were mutually protected on both sides, but they were also the most worked unit, carrying messages between the commander and his troops in their zones almost ceaselessly. Talon's bloodshot eyes met Ethran's, and the youth's back straightened even more. To your feet, runners, Ethran barked. As if yanked by cords, the 3 sprang to their feet, the soft soles of their boots barely making a sound as they stood at attention in front of their captain. Ayler slipped around the table to join her companions, still panting slightly, but standing tall. We have one more movement before day's end. We've lost all the ground we took yesterday. We can't let that happen tomorrow. I've got directions for each of you to pass on. Then you'll gather the rest of my runners and rendezvous at Zone 4 command. Zone 4, sir? Ayler asked, a puzzled look on her face. The captain returned her gaze. Night is coming, he replied. Return to Zone 4. He could see Ayler's mind working, puzzling out what he was trying to do. If he was sending his runners away, it was because the enemy needed to think he was at an alternate location. With the coming of night, the rules of the game changed. Conflict could last beyond sundown, and short raids were acceptable, but no major movements or attacks were allowed. There were spectators to consider and wagers, tied not only to the outcome but to the flow of battle and movement. This was a gentleman's game after all, with strict rules dictated by the crown. The agreed-upon terms became law once the conflict was settled, and no one wanted to wake up to the surprise of a complete change in trajectory without being able to witness it in daylight. There was one exception to that rule. At night, the enemy command, all but the runners, could be seized and taken captive by the opposing side. The game would not end there, but it was highly unlikely that the side whose command was taken would not come out victorious in the end. What's more, if the side who captured the opposing commander won, the winning house was allowed to set the terms of release. Though the occurrence was rare, it was always a risk, and always resulted in an exorbitant ransom designed to empty the coffers of the house, and if possible, drive it into debt or possible ruin. If the house refused to pay, the captive could be held indefinitely. The stakes this time were higher, and Ethran felt it. In a show of bad form, Corvin had remained behind in Tradoc. It was a mark against the house and lowered their standing in the eyes of the crown, lessening their position with the game master and arbiters. Given the recent death of Baron Umari, it could be excused, but it still shone a bad light on house leadership. Seizing the head of a house was what gave the house the incentive to pay, even if it had to go into debt. If Ethran was captured, he had little doubt as to what his final fate would be. With an unknown traitor on the loose, hopefully his command would survive the night. House Umari was not the only house with special cells below its jail. Captain Ethran closed his eyes and relaxed into the plush velvet chase lounge. Smooth and luxurious, the overstuffed cushions enveloped him in their gentle embrace, like a mother's arms swaddling an infant. During training, his men would learn how to handle the rigors of deprivation, to develop the mental fortitude required to go without, and he would suffer right alongside them. But the command centers in each zone were designed with anything but deprivation in mind. The first floor of each command building had accommodations for a small contingency of officers and their commander, while the second floor was dedicated for the baron or high seat of the house, along with a small retinue. The commander and office quarters were comfortable enough, with soft, clean linens, cushioned chairs, and each was more spacious than strictly necessary. The room set aside for house leaders and retainers, however, were quite luxurious, with lavish rugs, overstuffed cushions and chairs, and hardly a bare surface to be seen, hiding the fact that the buildings were solid stone, designed to withstand nature and prevent the spread of fires. While it was up to each house to provide for its soldiers in the field, the crown provided the accommodations for house leaders in attendance during their war game skirmishes. Sparing expenses was not a concept those in high positions seemed able to comprehend. It was not precisely acceptable for him to use the house leader's quarters, but neither was it forbidden. Since Corvin had abandoned him to fight on his own, Ethran felt no qualms about putting the accommodations prepared for the premier to use. Though he would have preferred a nice chilled punch, he was thoroughly enjoying the dark drow vintage that the crown had provided. He took in the room again as he brought the sturdy goblet to his lips. The goblet may have intricate carvings and feel light in his hand, but he probably could have struck the thing with a hammer and not left a mark. He smiled, running his fingers over the pattern of doves and grape clusters that marched around its rim as he recalled Baron Umari throwing one of these goblets across this very command center room. It was one of the early campaigns they had been on together, him, the newly raised captain of the guard, and Arnhem anxious about Ethran's ability to strategize. Ethran had had to convince the Baron to trust him, rehashing every detail of his strategy until the Baron finally conceded and let the plan move forward as Ethran proposed. They had won quite handily, securing strong rights to the court and an additional source of revenue from the defeated Baron and his province. Arnhem had never again questioned his tactics in such a forceful manner. He had offered doubts and tried to test Ethran's reasoning, but the victory had secured the Baron's trust in him as a commander, absolutely. They had seen many campaigns together since that one, and the Baron had been there at every one, standing by Ethran's side and praising his name and their gathered forces. It was not Kuvia, but Baron Umari who had earned Ethran's loyalty and devotion. More than his house leader, Arnhem had been his friend. Ethran was barely past his youth when he joined the Avalonian Western Guard. Barish Umari, Arnhem's father, had been the Baron at the time. Arnhem, a little older than Ethran, was still subject to his father, but worked amicably with him to strengthen Avalonia's position in the realm. He would frequently train with the guardsmen stationed at the barracks at the manor house. He and Ethran had first met at one of those sessions and had become fast friends despite their differences in station. After Barish's death from the wasting sickness, Arnhem had succeeded his father as the new Baron. Less than 2 decades later, Ethran had been appointed captain of the Western Guard. There were some who balked at the young Baron's decision, and at Ethran's own youth compared to the other captains. Whispers of nepotism made their way through the ranks and political circles at the capital, but Arnhem ignored them. In fact, in private, he embraced the accusations completely. "Yes, we are friends," Arnhem had said, "but you are also competent. When I know I can trust you completely, and I want you to succeed, why shouldn't I appoint you? The only difference between my appointment and what others have done is that I appointed you as my friend. I have no other benefit than to see you succeed and earn your loyalty. If you had bought political influence or great power, no one would bat an eye." Ethran rose from the chaise, walked to the carved table with its high-backed chairs. He ran his fingers over the polished stone surface. "I miss you, my friend," he said, raising his cup to the memory before taking a slow sip. A pang of sadness washed over him, and he grunted to clear the lump forming in his throat. He could recall clearly the times the Baron had sat across from him at this table, wooden cards in his hand as they played a game of row or queen's basket. At the manor house they would occasionally play pitch, though Ethran usually won those, much to Arnhem's chagrin. He was decent, but didn't have a mind for strategy, but he always brought his cards with him. It was here, too, that Arnhem had brought the Baroness with him on one of the campaigns. He had been on edge the entire time, knowing that if the command were taken, he would pay whatever ransom was necessary to see Sha'ara free. The thought of the Baroness brought even more pain. "I'm sorry I failed you," he said with a sigh, "so very sorry." He brought the goblet down onto the table hard enough that a geyser of wine sprayed across the glassy surface. All that he'd been given, the trust that had been placed in him, and still House Umari was on the verge of destruction, and he had failed to protect it at every turn. It was his men that should have protected and saved Baroness during her ride so long ago. He had failed to keep assassins from reaching Tawara. He had been at the Bronze Palace with the Baron when they were attacked, and failed to keep his friend, the man who had placed so much trust in him, alive. He could not fail the princess too. Time and again he had proven himself to be a pathetic bodyguard. He had no business protecting the princess. He was a strategist, not a guard, though even that fact seemed to be in question now. He had had no choice but to send Tawara away to hide in anonymity, far from him and her house. Ethran could only pray that the men he'd sent to protect Tawara would succeed where he had failed, and hopefully she would still have a home to return to when it was all over. Despite his failures, Ethran made a vow to himself. He would discover who was responsible for the death of his baron and friend, and he would kill them. A knock interrupted his thoughts, and he turned toward the door as he spoke. "Come." The heavy iron-banded door opened to reveal Lieutenant Lorana. She still wore the golden breastplate, and she gripped her sword hilt as she saluted. Given that the command could be attacked at any moment, he did not falter for remaining armed inside the command building. "Captain," she said as she dropped her salute and entered the room, turning to shut the door behind her. "I wonder if I might have a brief word before we officially discuss strategy." It was part of the nightly routine for him and his command staff to review events of the day and evaluate strategies planned for the following day. It was a bit earlier than usual, but he welcomed the interruption to his thoughts. Besides, he had to start testing the waters. Who was the leak? Some time alone with her might give him an opportunity to begin probing for information. Whoever it was, he would need to find them quickly before any chance of defeating Orlan was lost. "Of course, Lieutenant, you might as well pour yourself a drink. We've got a long night ahead of us, and Lieutenant Sage and Cavril arrive." "Yes, sir," she said with a half smile. She paused, glancing at the table. "Is everything all right, Captain?" He followed her gaze to the spray of wine across the tabletop and returned an embarrassed smile. "Just got a little carried away with some frustration is all." He retrieved his goblet and held it out toward her. "Would you mind refilling this? I'm afraid I lost most of it on the table." "Of course, sir," she replied, taking the goblet and heading toward the stand at the side of the room that held the ceramic pitchers of wine. Ethran sighed inwardly. It wasn't the embarrassment. It was that he had let himself become frustrated and caused the spill to begin with. He went to the kitchen and returned with a towel. Lieutenant Lorana waited beside the chaise he had occupied earlier, her goblet in one hand, the other at parade rest position behind her back. "Bring my wine over and we can sit and discuss before the others arrive, Lieutenant," he said, as he crossed to the table and began wiping up the wine. "What is it you wanted to talk to me about?" Lorana gave no response. He wiped the last of the moisture from the table and turned to look at her. He had no time to react to the handguard of Lorana's sword that struck him square in the jaw. Bum, bum, bum. There's a little teaser.
All right.
Jared, thoughts?
Well, it's a good chapter. It's ends a little abruptly, I think, intentionally.
Yeah. I realized in there I kept saying Orlan because in a couple spots we said Orlan, in a couple spots we said Olin. So we have to check our spelling of some names. There's one spot we haven't fixed yet. We haven't changed yet. So you guys are getting listening or getting some inside information here. The deal with the ferryman.
Mm-hmm.
We had talked about that. We haven't come up with an alternate. We've received some feedback that's the ferryman makes
It's too Greek. Yeah.
It's too Greek, too much directly pointed at like Earth history thing. And we're like, yeah, we just threw it in there as a placeholder. And we never fixed it. Never changed it. And I just realized reading it right now that I'm like, we still haven't changed that.
Yeah, that caught my ear too.
I'm like, dang it. Little things like that, we got to make sure we catch. So I'm going to go in right now and highlight that. Well, let's see. What could we come up with besides make a deal with the ferryman? We we have, I mean, we have kind of a God structure with set up already. We just This one we just kind of threw out there. We're like, oh well, we don't have that specific lore nailed down yet for the high elves about them, like moving on from like,
Their afterlife.
yeah,
Yeah.
like what is it? Or it doesn't even have to be the afterlife thing. The ferryman points to something afterlife, but it doesn't have to be that. Like I was thinking, oh, it's got to make a deal with the gods, and I'm like, that's too generic. We have a document. It's world expanding details where we go through. We outline like the belief systems. Um, I thought like we refer to the two moons are Farron and Galdrith, and we refer to Farron and Galdrith as though referencing gods.
Yeah.
Like we already do that in multiple places. Um, like we'll say by Farron's whatever, or by Galdrith, and Farron is the traveling moon, Galdrith is the hearth moon that's always there. And we have our month, Faranar, which is that one moon cycle, the cycle of Faranar, where Galdrith and Farron are both in the sky at the same time. And
Right.
that's when the um, that's when the Trekken gather together and begin to like stage big camps where they
Right.
those who gather, that's where they stay, where they winter in the winter months before going back out and traveling. It's also where they like perform marriages and mix up, try to wide broaden the gene pool a little bit, spread it out a little bit. So we have these references. We have the month or our moon cycles. So Galdrithel, Aerolith, Aeson, Sartan, Norna, Darvanch, Aerolith, Petnala, Aeolith, Ryo, Volmar, Velmar, Faranar, Thyphel, and Visar. And those all reference we have a god structure. But we still haven't gone in and said, okay, instead of make a deal with the ferryman, who are they going to make a deal with? See, this is how we come up with it. We're coming up with literal back lore for our book right now. What's that? Necessity is the mother of invention.
Yeah.
It's the mother of storytelling too. Like we need this piece. We have gods. We know our moon cycles are named after gods.
So pick one, and that's the god of the underworld. And
Well,
then
it doesn't even have to be a god. Maybe it's the god of war. Maybe it's the god of battle. Maybe it's the god of strife. The god of life. The god of, maybe there's a god of strategy. What is in Crepopolis?
Mhm.
What's his mother goddess of?
I don't remember.
I don't remember what it is. Let's see. So we have with the elven populations, we have the wood elves. We know they're pompous and fastidious. They have a queen. They see themselves as benevolent overseers of drow and wood elves. They don't care much for humans. They see the Alkari as not having innate worth. The Alkari are unnatural. They're spiritual but not religious. The permeating spiritual forces in nature that keep things in harmony and in their proper order. So, but they still reference gods. Then we get into the wood elves. The wood elves are spiritual as well, but with more ritual. They're more ritualistic than the high elves. They actually refer to the spirits. So we get to see some of that to start to come out with Athandra. She starts referencing, calling, like, the spirits need, whatever. Or by the spirits, let the spirits do X, Y, or Z kind of thing. But they do reference, like we do have multiple references in book 2 coming out where they reference more specifically Farron, not as much Galdrith, not yet, because Galdrith is the moon that's always in the sky. Farron is the moon that comes and goes, and it has an impact because we know, another large body moving into the gravitational field of their planet is going to have an impact on tides and storms and things like that. So, they would see the coincidence. Hey, the traveler's moon is back, and with it, we start getting the weather. We start getting the tides are more severe. Maybe people sleep weird. They get more drunk. I don't know. So we already have references to Farron. What did you look it up? What is?
Yeah, she's the goddess of self-destruction and questionable choices.
Yeah. So there you go. We have these moon cycles would be driven by high elf culture specifically, because high elves have essentially subjugated the wood elves. They've not subjugated but tamped back the drow, and they kind of set the economy and the political tone for everything amongst definitely in Kuvia and definitely in Adamar, and even have severe strong influence and pretty heavy influence into Jakaroth.
Mm-hmm.
And because they are connected to Parom, they're Parom's biggest, Parom does a lot of stuff internally. They have their 8 great cities, but their internal economy is amongst their cities, but they trade a lot with Kuvia. So they still have a pretty heavy influence from Kuvia. And then the Confederation of Brundia, they're kind of isolated, keep to themselves. We already have, Parom and the Confederation have kind of their own reckoning for moon cycles, but they kind of reference what the High Elves do. The High Elves kind of like, as the High Elves go, so go everybody else to some extent.
Mm-hmm.
So the gods, even though there's not a structured religion amongst the High Elves, they do have a reference to gods. So I say right now, we go with Sartan.
Okay.
We've got to make a deal with Sartan, but we got to have a reference to that in there. So we'll have to add another sentence in there. We're replacing the ferryman right now. So if my sister is listening, she's one of the people who called it out and was like, hey, this really threw me out of, because I was like, wait a minute. You're cheating. Like, I know it wasn't supposed to stay in there. So right here, I'm taking out the ferryman. It's going to say, it'll take a deal with Sartan. Right there. Changed it. Done. It'll take a deal with Sartan to bring things back in our favor. So we'll need a sentence right here of, if the god or whatever, he's trying to, if the god of wagers, I
don't like that.
I don't like that either. See, this is also what we do. We say things and then we go, nah. We'll have to think about from a lore perspective. We can't be too light about this. It's actually got to fit into the lore we already have set up for the High Elves.
Yeah.
But we can say something like, if the god will lend his ear our way, or lend, if we can get the god, if the god is listening, maybe he'll hear us and pitch something our way. If the god does something, then something. That's what I'm putting in there right now, and I'm going to highlight it so that we see it and it doesn't stay something does something, and then we'll fix it. So if you're listening, if you have a thought, you've got a very short amount of time, potentially, to say, what if Sarton does blah, blah, blah? You can influence, we're, as the story progresses, we are assigning, like Farron, that's the traveling moon, but they also refer to Farron. Farron is also a god. He would be a superior god, like Farron, and Galdrith would be superior gods because they can see them. They're in the sky. The other gods would be like gods that influence them. Some of them have representation of other things in the sky, stars, constellations, stuff like that. But again, we're talking about, even though they're elves, it's still a primal medieval world without science and stuff. Till we get into, well, in fact, the high elves kind of are poo-poo that, where the Paramis see it as blasphemous, the high elves poo-poo it. So we're going to find out later, we're going to jump into the Confederation of Brundia and bring in, so if you read book 1, which if you haven't, go do it, Flight from Shadows, Jared Lovelady and Chris Howell.
On Amazon.
Yep, go get it. We haven't thrown that out there in a while. But Confederation of Brundia, they got some steampunk going on. So if you read Master Elman, not, was it Elman? Is that his name?
Yeah.
Yeah, Elman, who sat on the bullwhacker. Had that whole interchange. So, not a spoiler, but little things. Elman doesn't come back in book 2, but Elman is going to come back, and he's going to be important later. So if you liked Elman is coming back, and he's going to play a bigger role in the future. He wasn't just a side character that we threw in. I mean, he was.
Yeah, but like most of our side characters, he's coming back.
Yes, Elman's going to come back. Again, not in this book, so no spoilers for this book, but we already know he's coming back, and he's got a significant role to play in the course of Duradim and what happens in the future. So, book 2, that's our teaser. That chapter was a simple betrayal. We wrote this. What did we? I'm trying to remember how early on, because book 1 and 2, when we first did book 1 and 2, it was all one book. So like this
was written.
This was way after.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've got that original manuscript that has 1 and 2 in it as a single book. And this stuff with Captain Ethran was not in there at all.
No.
But Captain Ethran, this kind of starts out within book 2. We get some things from Captain Ethran early on in book 2, and we're starting a story arc with Captain Ethran. That that arc does not happen in this book. This is, we start to get some Captain Ethran in this book. So we've got a few things that happen to him, and this is one of the pieces early on in book 2 of, we're starting to get things specifically from Captain Ethran that are happening to him, because he is not, Tuara and Athandra, they're at Samunis. He sent them away. Well, stuff's happening with him too. The realm is still on the verge of war. He's the captain of the Western Guard in one of the major provinces in the realm of Kuvia. So,
yep.
If stuff's happening, it's got to involve him. So, plus we wanted to tell his story. So he's going to have some shifts. He's going to have, just like, he's not going to get put through, he won't be put through, dragged down as deeply as Athandra is going to be.
No, but he's going to go through his stuff.
Yeah. I mean, our characters we're going to put them through some ups and downs. A lot of downs. But yeah, this kind of puts us, hopefully you enjoyed that. Kind of sets the tone for the kicking off point of some story that we're going to follow through this book and the next book and the next couple books with Captain Ethran, as we tell part one of Ascension of a Queen. So actually thinking about it, we haven't talked through this, but Tawara's arc, Ascension of a Queen, Ethran's arc of what's going to happen to him is going to follow right behind Tawara.
Yeah.
It's Ethran's arc through part one will mirror Tawara's arc. I hadn't thought about that. It's going to be slightly delayed and a mirror of Tawara.
Yeah, for the most part. It
Because the trajectory we have for Tawara's story and the trajectory we have for his story, the timelines align. His is just more condensed. Hers, we get deeper into her story, but from an event perspective of the things that happen, mimic hers, mimic the things that are going to happen to her. They kind of mirror each other a little bit, both the lows and the highs. And then I think, well, yeah, we'll get the same thing in Descent into Madness in part two. We know what is going to happen with Tawara in Descent into Madness, and where Descent into Madness is going to end. So I hadn't thought about this at all. This is just epiphany right now. That what Tawara goes through in Descent into Madness, Ethran goes through identically, but at a smaller scale. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it does.
I mean,
you're right.
They're both already in high house positions. They're both going to go through these struggling arcs in Ascension of a Queen, and then they're going to go through a very similar arc in Descent into Madness. They're so two characters that are going to their stories will mimic each other throughout all three parts of this telling this story are Tawara and Ethran. So Athandra is going to have an arc, the timeline of her arc is going to be similar. Totally different.
Yeah.
Very, very different. And then, the other, we're gonna be pulling other characters. I mean, we've already pulled a few characters in book two. We're gonna start. We get a couple more perspectives, different story arcs, different pathways. But no, it was just interesting that just struck me. We hadn't actually talked through what that's gonna look like, or how arcs are similar. But yeah. From a starting position where they end up at the end of each part, and what they go through along the way, Ethran and Tawara will mirror each other constantly. Interesting. I wonder what that means.
I don't know if it means anything.
I don't know. I know, but it's interesting to be like, oh, hey, we did something. It was totally intentional. We did that on purpose. Copyright.
Yeah.
Trademark. I don't know. Whatever. Yeah. If you said we didn't do that on purpose, you're lying. So, yep, that's early on. Gives you a little bit of flavor. We broaden it out a little bit in book two. We've got a few more perspectives because by the end of book one, we've got that introduction. We have new characters that have come in, new people that we're starting to experience. They've separated. They're not all the main characters that, it's not like the Wheel of Time, the Two Rivers Five, or Emmons Field Five.
Mm.
It's not that level of all of them are like main character people.
Yeah.
But we do follow. We'll be following multiple supporting roles in smaller bits and pieces, but we'll still be following those supporting roles and following their arcs and see what happens to them along the way. And this is one of them.
Yep.
Yeah. So hopefully you enjoyed that. That's our little bit of a, give you a little taste of book 2. Only a few people have read this at all.
Yeah, just a couple.
So congratulations. You got something that very few people have experienced yet. So
We have a lot of people asking for this.
yes. Gosh, dang it. But we're getting there. We're getting there. Okay. Well, that's what we wanted to talk about today. Give you that little taste. And if you have any thoughts, if you have questions or comments or suggestions for our gods and the lore in our world, some of it, there's a bunch of stuff we have spelled out, but there's a bunch of stuff that we don't as well. There's things that as we go along, we're still creating the world. We're still creating the lore and the history and experiences. Not everything is fleshed out completely. So if you have some ideas, send them our way, and maybe we'll be like, hey, that's good. It's going in. And then we might hit you up and be like, hey, you got any more ideas? So, okay. Well, thanks for listening today. We appreciate it. Till next time, go in good spirits. Thanks for listening to the Creators Guild podcast. Don't forget to get your copy of A Flight from Shadows, available on Amazon. While you're there, please rate it and give it a review. If you like the Creators Guild, please like and subscribe, and make sure to share it with your friends. Until next time, go in good spirits.